Hello everyone, welcome to Clarity 1593 Supportability Training. In this section, we will review several staffing updates. First up is the introduction of a new configurable resource management workspace referred to as the staffing workspace. This new workspace includes a configurable grid to view, edit, and manage allocations across projects, ideas, and custom investments. Next, FieldLevel Security has been its footprint has been expanded to support the team object. Team object attributes can be secured using FieldLevel Security now. Last is what is now, so this is where we've got some explanation as well. So last, what is now called the staffing plan workspace has an improved user experience for deleting a resource, role, team, or investment allocation. I'm going to cover the differences between the staffing plan and the new staffing workspace in this section as well. So hold on. So why is this important? As many of you know, as soon as the first release as what is called the staffing plan workspace was introduced back in Clarity 15.1, customers were immediately requesting configuration capabilities, which are now commonplace in the modern UX. To drive adoption, users require more flexible tools to manage investment allocations. The configurable grid helps users review allocations from multiple perspectives and drive decision-making. I also want to let you know that the ability to create or add staffing allocations is not included in this initial release of the staffing workspace. I do want to emphasize initial release because the team will continue to iterate in this workspace over time. But the product team believes deliver the staffing workspace today, even with this limitation, will drive adoption, and this new workspace serves as the framework to further enhance the user experience with additional resource managed capabilities. Switching gears, FieldLevel Security continues to expand its footprint. In this release, administrators now can secure team object attributes, which will surely drive adoption, providing more control over what information is presented to the end user community. Lastly, the staffing plan workspace includes a new feature to help users avoid accidental allocation deletion. This capability was delivered as a direct output of the Customer Innovation Program. So what's changed? As mentioned, a new resource management workspace is being introduced, which includes the configurable grid to view, edit, and manage allocations across projects, ideas, and custom investments. As you would expect, the common grid in this workspace includes support for group by, export to CSV, configurable filtering and search, save views, options to include multiple per period metrics, as well as a configurable details flyout for allocation items. Quite frankly, these are the things that have been requested ever since we first introduced what is now called the staffing workspace. But this workspace is named staffing. We're going to dive deeper into staffing during the demo portion of this session. So let's talk about access rights to this new staffing area. As you can see, a staffing entry is available from the modern UX left navigation. A new access right is required to access staffing, and that access right is called staffing navigate, right? Our standard model for getting access to left navigation items. From an upgrade, following that upgrade to 15.9.3, administrators will need to grant user access to this new workspace. So what you knew in 15.9.2 as staffing has really been renamed to staffing plan in 15.9.3. So upon upgrade, all users that had access to 15.9.2 staffing now have access rights to the 15.9.3 staffing plan area using staffing plan navigate access right. The staffing plan and the staffing workspaces will coexist. So be aware of that. So what's changed? I wanted to convey a few notable differences between the staffing plan, right, the top image here, compared to the staffing workspace, compared to staffing, which is the bottom image. So as you know, staffing plan includes pre-built views to display resources allocated to investments in the form of these investment to resources or resources to investment views. The investment and resources are displayed, the investments and resources that are displayed in either view is determined by that telescope configured date range. Depending on the view selected, resources with and without investment allocations or investments with or without resource allocations are displayed. So essentially you're getting for that selected date range, investments and resources with or without any allocations in sometimes. So the per period metrics are limited to allocation and hard allocation. Resources are displayed using the first name, last name. The supported investment types include projects, ideas, custom investment types, and classic NPIOs or non-project investment objects. The supported resource type is only labor for resources, roles, and teams, and totals are displayed using sum of totals, to use the current terminology. On the other hand, staffing does not include any pre-built views, but provides flexibility to use group by with any suitable attribute. For example, a group by using the common investment name or a group by using the staffing resource attribute can be used to model the staffing plan workspace. The investments and resources displayed is determined by the chosen start and finish filters. And this grid only includes investments that have resource allocations. In other words, if an investment does not have any allocations, it will not be displayed in the grid. You have far more flexibility configuring per period metrics in terms of allocation, hard allocation, including actuals, EDC, remaining allocation, remaining availability, and total usage. Resources are displayed using last name, first name, which is the preferred method and consistent across the modern UX. And staffing has a set of robust filtering capabilities compared to the fixed set of filters in staffing plan. The support investment types include projects, ideas, and custom investment types. Classic NPIOs or non-project investment objects are not supported in the staffing workspace. The supported resource types include labor for resources and roles and teams, and non-labor, such as equipment, expense, or material. And totals can be displayed using either grand totals or sum of periods. These options were introduced in the last release. So staffing is another example of a new feature with a ton of flexibility. And it behooves you to spend some time getting familiar with its capabilities as it pertains to your customers' resource management requirements. As I mentioned, this is the first release of staffing, which will evolve over the next several releases. With that in mind, the next several slides and the demo itself will help you understand how to configure staffing to display the information that has been only obtained from the staffing workspace. I thought I'd start with something familiar. So you've got investment to resources, resources, investments, and the role views. So I thought I'd kind of focus in on those and how you can leverage the new staffing space to emulate that. So first up, from an investment to resources perspective. That staffing plan includes that pre-built view, right, to display investments and their resource allocations. That telescope determines the date range, it determines the investments to include. And then, as I mentioned, it's going to include investments with or without resource allocations. It's going to include project ideas and custom investment types and NPIOs. It's only focused on labor, but for roles, resources, and teams, and it's going to use sum of totals. However, the key point to focus on here is that if you're attempting to render an investment to resource perspective in the staffing workspace, Use group by of common investment name. And I'll show you this in the demo. And then use these filters that are noted here. Again, we're attempting to emulate what's in the staffing plan workspace. You have far more options, but in order to get there, you would use the staffing resource type of labor, the staff type of resource and team, and then you would use a finish after date and a start is before date. And then you have that added flexibility to include the per period metrics, and you control the display of weekly, monthly, or quarterly or annual periods. And then without any other filters applied, that listing would include projects, ideas, and custom investment types. And you can alter that in investment types that you want to view. And then depending on your scenario, you can choose grand totals or sum of periods. The point here is that you can emulate that investment to resources view in the new workspace. I'm not going to go through all the details that we just covered on the investment to resources view, but we want to look at it now from a resources to investment perspective. There's a few details at the top of the slide that outline the staffing plan workspace behavior. I'm not going to read those. You should know those already. But the key points to focus on if you're attempting to render the R to I or resources to investment perspective in this new staffing area is, again, instead of using group by investment, you would use group by resource. You would use the same additional filters that are captured here on the slide that coincidentally can be used with investment to resource perspective. And then, hey, you can include multiple per period metrics. You can determine the monthly display or weekly, etc. And then, you can apply filters to focus it in and down or on projects, ideas, or custom investment types, and then determine if you want to use grand totals or sum of periods. The point here is that you can emulate the R to I view in staffing. Last, as you can imagine, we're talking about the role request perspective. Again, there's a few details at the top of the slide that kind of articulate the behavior of the staffing plan workspace. But the key points to focus on if you're attempting to render a role request perspective in staffing is use the group by of role, right? Before on the investment to resources, we were using group by investment. The resource to investment perspective, you were using a group by a resource. And here we're kind of looking at roles. So use the group by staffing attribute role. And then you would use the filter. Oops, we lost it again. I think, let me catch that. Did the slide come back?
Yes.
Thank you.
It's back.
The filters, you would use resource type of labor. The staffing staff type, you would use role, right? Because that's what we're focused on. And then you would use the same date practices that we just discussed on the prior two slides. The point here again is you can emulate that role request view in the new staffing workspace. Next, moving on to field level security. Team object attributes can be secured using field level security. The team object FLS applies only to the modern UX attributes for attributes that are API enabled, and that's consistent across all applications of field level security. And then again, consistent with FLS, the administrator grants or revokes field access at the group level or simply suppresses the field altogether. Administrator, that's so easy for me to say. Administrators also have the added capability to modify the out-of-the-box custom field names, and that topic is going to be covered tomorrow in another section. Last, the staffing plan workspace includes an update to avoid accidental allocation deletions. Despite documented warnings, we have issues with users deleting resource or role on investments and deleting those allocations in the staffing plan when they click that X, right? In the prior release, a user could simply click the X and delete that allocation with no confirmation before the staffing record was deleted. We've introduced a user prompt to confirm they really want to delete the allocation. So as you expect, The user confirmation prompt is displayed on both resources to investments and investment to resources views. And this is another example of an output directly from the customer innovation program. All right, so let's get to the demo. Let's go look at those. Let's look at the access rights needed for staffing and staffing plan. We're going to go in there and look at use some save views to replicate R to I to R, and role requests. We'll use the field level security in the context of the team object, and then last we'll wrap it up with the update to the staffing plan on the user experience improvement or deleting allocations. So I'm going to move out of PowerPoint. Let's see, end show, and come back to the product. Okay, so I know we left off on blueprints, but I'll just come back to projects. So here we are at the modern UX grid view. First thing you want to do is kind of open up that left navigation and draw your attention to the two entries there. One that reads staffing and one that reads staffing plan. I'll click into staffing plan so that you can really just see that that's really just a renaming exercise, right? Here's our R to I, and I can go in other places. I'm going to go click on staffing and bring up our generic view. If I can get that, my generic view. Oh, by the way, the just kind of help differentiate when you're discussing staffing versus staffing plan. The staffing plan, I'll go back there. The staffing plan, we started using the term. This is kind of this telescopic resource managed area, right? You got the telescope to kind of help differentiate between the staffing area, which obviously doesn't have a telescope. So this is an entirely new resource management area based on the common grid, now pervasive throughout Clarity. So before we jump into staffing, let's take a look at the access rights to grant access to either of these workspaces. I'm going to go into admin, resources. I'll look at me, I'm Ian. I'll go to my access rights, global, and I'll type in staff keywords, and you'll see the staffing plan navigate is the one that was renamed and is for the telescopic workspace. And then we have, and actually they use it in the description here, telescopic. And then the staffing navigate is access to the new common grid-based workspace. So you can see this guy was really just renamed. Okay, so no changes are required for those users that now have the staffing plan navigate, right? Upon upgrade, everybody's access right that was in 15.9.2 called staffing navigate has been renamed to staffing plan navigate. Okay, and then this is the new one where administrators will have to go in and assign rights to users to let them gain access to this new area right here. Okay, so for the remainder of the demo, I'm going to focus on those three views that are available today in the staffing plan and show you how the staffing area can model them. So eventually I'm going to walk through I to R to I, and role requests, but in the context of the new staffing workspace. So let me pick my say view investment to resources. I'll go ahead and expand this guy so you can see, the investments and the allocated resources. You can see my group by is the name, right? I'll take this off and just take it back. But I just did group by name, so that's in group by investment. I'll expand the filters here. In this case, I'm using, show me everything where Dana is the investment manager. Of course, I'm using I can use inactive if I want, but I'm using active. I'm using resource type of labor. I'm using staff type of resource or team. And this is the interesting part that you need to focus on is, your date range. So here I'm looking at things that end after February of 2021. but they start before September 1st, 2021. So in other words, in this example, I only want to review allocations between March and August of 2021. I'll open the column panel here so you can appreciate the configurability of this workspace. Got that new widget here to collapse everything. But this is the column panel includes multiple objects such as staffing or team. All right, I've got all the attributes associated with that. I've got my shared investment attributes. I've got the resource attributes, and then other investment types, ideas, projects, custom investment types that have allocations. And then, of course, I have my totals that I can bring into the grid. Yeah, so I've got my view options. I've got the column panel for, I'm going to click on, where was I? Rakesh. I'm going to look at that. I'm going to expose the details flyout, right? This gives me his hard allocation data, kind of March through August, as compared to the overall duration. This is a lengthy investment, 5 years, and he's got some mixed status, right? So it's giving me that all that kind of information here in the I to R view. I'll go ahead and switch to the R to I view, discard those changes, and I'll come back and I'll expand Rakesh again. But look, I've filtered by resource, right? I'll pick Rakesh and just see, I can see the investments that he is allocated to. Again, I'm using the exact same filter criteria. So it's if you're looking to emulate that view, again, a staff type, labor only, etc., right? And the common investment. So again, I'm looking at things between March and August. So I've looked at, I'm highlighting the data-driven models project. I can see his hard allocations. He's fully booked 100%, and obviously that aligns with the start and finish of the actual investment. So he's 100% booked to that particular investment. Let me go to the role request view. I'll kind of close out the thing there. So again, I've done my group by on resource, but but my filter is staff type role, right? I'm still using labor and the same dates. Again, I'm looking for allocations for the date range of between May and August. I'm going to open up the expand the role request for a marketing person. I'll kind of click on the 4.0 investment and open up the flyout, and I can start to see the resource, the experience information they're looking for, the start and end date of the allocation request, and I can come and what OBS they're potentially requesting that resource, the role to come out of. And I can pick to replace that role with an actual resource. I can select it right here. I could also do it in the grid, but you'll notice here that in this particular release, the filter is not presenting me only the roles with that particular as the ABM marketing as a primary role. We're addressing that in a future release, but I can go ahead and replace that role assignment with a named resource in this release. Okay, so you can see there's multiple configuration options that are available in this workspace. As I mentioned, there's a lot of flexibility here, so take a look at it, get familiar with it, and certainly ask questions if you have any. Again, this is only the first release, and the product team will continue to iterate in this area over the next several releases. So that concludes the demo of the new staffing workspace. So let's move on to field level security for the team object. So I'm going to go into administration, attributes, and I'm going to filter on the team object. Get rid of roadmap. We covered that already. And bring in team. So it's bringing back, roughly, 51 attributes that are available here. You can see a few of these attributes have been secured. Looks like edit access has been provided to the app admin group, view only to the Modern UX PML group, and that open for time entry attribute shouldn't even be visible to the modern UX PML group. So let's go back to our list of projects. And as I get into this, right, you can start to see the shields that are here. Those are other indicators of field level security in place. But I want to get to this module, and we'll go into our staff module, and I'll get rid of this guy, and I can start to see for the architect role, I can go into the details flyout, and I see those. Since I'm a member of that edit group, I can see obviously the secure symbol on these three guys. I have edit privileges, so I can update these things. I can change, the department if I wish to, which they're going to source this particular role. So I've got that edit access. So let's take a look at it from another user perspective. I'm going to log out and come back in as CAMOS. Oops. And I'm going to go into our project, go to the staff module, and to be consistent, for that same role request, I'm going to open up the details view. I see two things are indicated to be secure, and I've got read-only access to both of those because I was given that view-only access. And as you may notice, the open for time entry attribute is not even visible here. I can go to the column panel and try and look for that, and it's not available to me. So field level security has done its job and not displaying that at all. So that concludes the demo of field level security for the team object. Let's move on to the improved user experience for deleting an application in the staffing plan workspace. But the first thing I want to do is come back in as the administrator, Ian. And I'm going to go into staffing plan. And here I am at the R to I view. I'm going to go ahead and open up Alex Garcia and look at his investment allocations. I can see quite a few for this, or one anyway, for this particular duration. I'm going to go ahead and click that X. I really don't want Alex on that thing at all. Oops, are you sure you want to do this? So it's giving me that confirmation as we expect. I can also go into the investment to resources view and go to Dana Lewis and attempt to delete her booking, and that's also saying, hey, are you sure you want to do this? So I'm going to click select cancel to not delete. So that was fairly straightforward, simple improvement there as an output of the customer innovation program. So that concludes the demo of the improved user experience there. And that includes the demo of the staffing plan area and field level security for the team object.